Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and greetings everyone. Welcome to my final year project presentation. I am Fadhli Bin Hashim, a final year student in Bachelor's in Mechanical Engineering. My title for the final year project is the determination of pH sensor performance in detecting engine oil deterioration. I am supervised by my lecturer Dr. Rozina Abdul Rani. First, let's begin with the content of the presentation, which is the project summary, introduction, methodology, and lastly, the expected results from the project. For the project summary, there are many possible effects of delaying or not the changing and the engine oil of a vehicle. The first effect is that the user experiences the poor engine performances of their car. Second, the worst can happen is that the engine might be in state of failure if the user keeps delaying and not changing their engine's oil. Engine oil helps to lubricate and protect the engine parts and decrease the friction between the parts that will help take a good care of the engine. Based on the research is that the new engine oil tends to have the pH value of 7 to 8 and will become acidic due to the long use of the engine oil. So the goal of this project is to develop an IoT pH sensor to monitor the engine oil and determine the performance of the pH sensor using the Arduino Uno microcontroller. Next is the introduction of this project. The introduction consists of 4 parts, which is the background of the project, the literature review regarding the topic, the problem statement and objective of it, and the scope and limitation of the project itself. As we can see here, the figure shows the components required for the system. As for detection part, I am using the pH sensor module to detect the pH value of the solution and send the data to the Arduino Uno microcontroller and display it directly to the I2C LCD display. For the transceiver, I am using the ESP8266 Wi-Fi module to send the data from the microcontroller to the receiver. As for the receiver, I am using the software called Blink application. This application will show the data received from the sensor module and the Arduino into the user's smartphone. The system will always monitor the pH value of the engine oil. Next, for the literature review, I am going to tell you about the pH and the corrosion. The pH is measured by the power of hydrogen and it represents the acidity, the neutral and the basicity of a solution. There is a range number for the pH which is from 1 to 14. Basically, from 1 to 6 is the number of acidity, 7 is the neutral of a solution, and the rest, which is 9 to 14, will be the basic of the solution, or we call it alkaline. pH measurement of a solution has been easier with the invention of pH sensor. So how this pH sensor works? pH sensor will generate output in terms of voltage in response to the degree of acidity and the basicity of the liquid solution. The pH sensors consist of 2 different electrodes. One is the reference electrode that will stay at the voltage of the neutral solution, and the other one is the electrode represent the potential changing in response to the acidity or the basic of the solution. When the pair of the electrode is immersed in the solution, it will develop potential difference between them. Basically, the 2 electrodes will compare the result of the voltage and we can get the result from it. Then the meaning of the corrosion is the destructive oxidation of metals. It is basically the deterioration of any physical properties of any material with the chemical reaction and its environment. Any acidic fluids will react with the metals and degrade it. From the studies, high hardness material will also be affected by the acidic fluids. By the increasing of the pH value of a solution, the corrosion of material will be decreased. Next is the engine oil. Engine oil is an important material for the combustion engines. The engine oil helps to lubricate the moving parts, seal the clearances between mating parts, and function to dissipate heat in the engine. It will help to decrease the wear and tear due to contacts between metal. Engine oil also helps to prevent rust in the engine, as the friction between parts is decreased. With the help of the engine oil, the fuel economy of the vehicle will essentially increase. It is really a critical factor for the performance and longevity of the engine vehicle. The next part is the problem statement and the objective. The problem for the topic is first, due to poor engine performance. The second one is the decrease of the fuel economy performance. And the last one is the engine failure due to bad engine oil. For the objective is to provide pH sensor detection method to detect the condition of the oil. Next is to construct the source of code of the pH sensor using Arduino IDE software. And lastly, to develop an Arduino based pH reader with the capability to read the data via smartphone. Then we are going to see the scope and the limitation of the project. The scope of the project is to determine the sensor performance on the engine oil. Next is to be able to read the data on the smartphone by using the Arduino Uno. Then the limitation of the project is that it is only limited only to Arduino Uno. The sensitivity of the sensor also can be affected by the environment. The calibration of the sensor is only limited to the buffer solution of pH 7, 4 and 10, and only limited use of engine oil. Okay, let's continue with the methodology of the project. As we can see here, it is the flow chart of the methodology. We start the project with the finding the literature review regarding the topic. Collect the journal, books or article related to the topic and extract out the related data and cite it with the references. After literature review is done, I can start with the circuit design and the configuration of the project. After that, I can continue to write the coding of the project using Arduino IDE software. Then I implement the software. If the coding is not suitable or corrupted, I need to go one step backward to rewrite the coding. After the coding is done, I need to do development of the hardware and then implement it. Then I test and evaluate the hardware. If I am not satisfied with the hardware, I need to do the troubleshooting of the hardware. If all of that is satisfied, then it's all done. Lastly, I'm going to talk about the expected result of the project. As we can see here, this is the hardware setup of the project. It consists of all the components that I have talked in the introduction before. The picture next to the hardware setup is the interface of the Blink application in a smartphone. As we can see, it displays the pH value of a solution. The reading of the pH value displays every 1 second. Next, we can see the graph of the pH versus time and the voltage versus time made using the Simulink MATLAB. The graph is plotted using real-time data using the software. We can see the difference between the pH value and the voltage value in correlation with time. When at pH 7, which is neutral, the voltage at around 2.5 volt, which is half the voltage input to the pH sensor module and the probe. Total voltage that is being supplied to the module is 5 volt, which means the neutral of the solution is at 2.5 volt. When at pH 4, which is acidic solution, the voltage is increased around 3 volt. When at pH 10, which is the basic of the solution, the voltage decreases around 2 volt. So basically, more acidic the solution, higher voltage is achieved. The picture next to the graph is the Simulink MATLAB block diagram. This block diagram is the key to make the reading of the graph in real time. Finally, I'm going to talk about the sensitivity and the response time of the pH module and the probe. As we can see here, the figure shows the graph of pH versus time. As we can see in the table, the stability of the data is quite well since it only has the tolerance about 0 to 0.2 in each pH value that have been tested. As for the response time, between the changing of the pH is also quite well. We can see that the change of pH 4 to pH 10 only takes about 1 second to reach the stability of the data. As for now, The performance of the module and the pro is doing great. That's all from me. Thank you very much for listening. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.